You're live, Chair.
Good evening once again, members. This is a special meeting, an extraordinary meeting of the Council on the 3rd of November. My name is Councillor Boyce. I'm Chairman of the Council. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put up your hand to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to agenda papers and keep your contribution as clear and concise as possible. Apologies for absence. Can you run through them again, please, Ms. Casey?
Yes, Chairman, we've received apologies for absence from Councillors Brian Beale, Councillor Harrod, Councillor Fleming, Councillor Morley, Councillor White.
And we picked
Durham.
up Councillor
Councillor
Dewick,
please.
and
Durham.
And Durham.
Councillor Dewick. And we
Durham.
also, Councillors Eaves and Councillor, Stevens are absent.
Yeah, okay.
Durham.
Yeah, I think Councillor, you mentioned Councillor Durham.
I did indeed,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you. Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, just to make a note, I do believe that Councillor Stevens has sent her apologies because she sent her apologies for last night's meeting. So I would assume that she'd send apologies for this meeting as well.
Right, thank you. Agenda item 3, declaration of interest to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest and non-registrable interest relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Any declarations of interest on this? No. Then agenda item 4, Maldon District Local Development Plan Review on pages 30 to 70 to consider the report of the Director of Strategy, Performance and Governance. Leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I think the report is quite well defined what this is about, and it is born out of the recommendation of overview and scrutiny that came up at the last council meeting, Chairman, and it's about reviewing the methodology in terms of the local development plan. And you'll see the recommendations there are quite clear, little 1 and little 2. The report before members is setting out the Maldon District Local Development Plan Review methodology and including Appendix 1, which is being sought to be noted. And that's a very long document. Then there's little 2, that the Council considers its decision options as set out in Section 7 of this report to assure itself that the Maldon District Local Development Plan Review methodology is an appropriate lawful and procedural basis from which to conduct the Maldon District Local Development Plan Review. The whole context is set out, Chairman, explaining how really there is a structure to this and about the legal status, and obviously we have to do things a certain way. Procedural methodology is totally contained within the report and explained, Chairman. I would like to draw members' attention, though, when I can get to it, because it is a rather long report. There is under 7, there are 2 options there which I will highlight, and I can't find the page yet, but I'm getting there, Chairman. Yeah, I'm coming down. It's just very slow on this machine to scroll. There we are, options on page 14, 7.1, option 1, Chairman, continue with the LDP review methodology and member engagement approach as summarised in this report. And then option 2, amend the LDP review methodology and or member engagement approach to provide further assurance. Chairman, if I could hand over, I think, to Mr. Dodson first. I think
Yeah, please,
he would like to come
Mr.
in, and
Dodson.
I think we're going to have a presentation from Officer later. Thank you.
Mr. Dodson.
Thank you, Chairman. Members have asked for a review of the methodology of the local development plan, and officers have put together the detailed report and appendix that you have in your papers. Mrs. Altoft-Shawland will also take you through a presentation covering the key points. I should apologise at this point that Mr Winslow, who was due to be here and present, is unwell and has been unable to attend, but will ably be substituted by Mrs Althoff-Shawland. It's my hope that the papers and the presentation will help to clarify the process and members' understanding of why and how the methodology operates in this way, of the significant changes to national policy since the development of the current plan, and how the evidence base that supports the plan has changed in the 8 years since the work was undertaken for the current plan. I hope that the report and the presentation that you'll receive offers the understanding and reassurance to members for the LDP process to progress. I would note that further delays to the progression of the review do put the district at further risk in terms of both unallocated development and the ability of the council to ensure the provision of appropriate infrastructure associated with the development is brought forward. It is in the options for members to seek amendments to the methodology, and whilst I hope this is not the case once you've heard the advice of officers, we may, depending on any proposals coming forward, need to adjourn council for legal advice and report back at a later date on whether those proposals are possible. I would also like to state that the debate should focus solely on the methodology and not any individual sites that members are concerned with. This is about how we review the plan, not the individual sites. But I'll now hand over to Mrs Althoff-Shawland, through you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Dodson. Mrs Shawland, would you like to give your presentation, please?
Yes, thank you. I've got a presentation which I'll share on the screen. Hopefully this will work. No, it's not working. No. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. It's not sharing properly, but if you can see it, that's okay. So, on the 17th of July of this year, the approved LDP became 5 years old, and therefore, irrespective of any decision that we made previously, we now have a legal requirement to review our plan. That means, at a minimum, a partial review is required at a minimum of the strategic policies in the plan. And we have a legal, we have to do that legally. The LDP review has to be carried out in accordance with the law and national planning policy guidance, and have regard to national planning policy. And we've set out paragraphs 5.2 and 5.3 of the report, the various legal provisions that you need to comply with in order to make sure your methodology is legally compliant and policy compliant. So paragraph 5.6 of the report are the basic steps which we need to complete in order to make sure we're legally and policy compliant. So we need to prepare our plan. So in the preparation stage, we would set out a timetable, we'd update our statement of community involvement, we'd set out a project plan and set a budget, set a procurement strategy, approve a duty to cooperate strategy, and we've done all of that. So we've passed that phase of the plan preparation. You would then move on to initial evidence gathering and consultation. So you would start to update any of your relevant evidence. You would start to engage with your duty to cooperate partners. You would produce an issues and options document and carry out a consultation exercise on that document. You would then refine the spatial options, the growth options, apply evidence to those remaining options, carry out or commission additional evidence such as transport modelling. You could engage with other partners such as Anglian Water, electricity companies, other people have an interest in the plan. Once again, we would engage with our duty to cooperate partners. We would revise our policies and draft them, and we would work on potential site allocations. We've reached the issues and options stage, so we consulted on our issues and options, but we haven't got any further than that. So after that, at the publication of an LDP, we move on to the next stage. We would produce a preferred options report, which would be publicly consulted on. We would then analyse those consultation responses and amend the draft plan. And then we would move on to the next stage of the process, and we would publish a submission plan for our examination. That would go out for consultation. So at that point, you are publishing your plan, and you can't change your plan up to that point except to do typo changes. Then you submit your plan to the Secretary of State for examination, and you go into your examination period. The inspector examines your plan and finds it sound or unsound. He may want to do some modification consultations, and after he's examined it, he produces a report. If it's found sound, then the council go forward and adopt the plan. So we have been following the methodology for the local plan set out by the Local Government Association Planning Advisory Service, which is on paragraph 5.7 of the report. And I've just put it on the slide, but we are here in this process here. So we're developing our emerging local plan. So apart from the legal requirement to review your LDP strategic policies, there are other reasons to carry out the plan. Our plan is now moving out of date. The NPPF has been updated 3 times since we approved our plan in 2017, and the way you set out your plan now differs from the way that it was set out when we submitted our plan, our approved plan for examination. Now you have to have separate strategic policies, and they set out your cross-boundary issues and set the strategic direction of an area. The present plan doesn't make a lot of separation between strategic policies and non-strategic policies. So we're going to have to unpick that. And effectively, that means that nearly all the policies will require some form of attention. When you review your plan, the housing requirement rolls forward into your refreshed plan period, and that means you're going to have to look at new site allocations, both for housing and possibly for economic sites, to make sure you have a consistent supply in line with your identified need. And local plans should be underpinned by up-to-date evidence, and the evidence base for the present LDP is quite old in many respects. Some of it very old, it dates back to 2010, and that all does need to be updated. The member engagement for the LDP, in February last year, the council established the Planning Policy Working Group of 7 members, reporting into the Strategy and Resources Committee. On the 14th of March, that working group was opened up to invite all members to the meetings, and that has been happening when the meetings have been taking place. And the working group is going to be working through the process of formulating the plan and reporting back to Strategy and Resources Committee and ultimately Council. So the terms of reference for the working group are to provide cross-party member engagement and discussion of the work, to prepare the policy documents for review, and to provide informal feedback and discussion with officers in order to guide the formal recommendations to Strategy and Resources Committee. To provide regular updates to the Strategy and Resources Committee, and to take part in active part in any planning policy training, and that includes all members now. So on the 6th of September, the working group accepted some proposed changes to better deliver its terms of reference and trying to make sure that the working group really focused on effectively engaging in the process, because going forward it's going to have a really enormous workload, so we need to make sure that it's really focused. So a forward plan was to be prepared and aligned for the working group so that everybody knows what's coming up in the forward meetings. And it also allows members to engage at appropriate times. Agenda papers would be sent to members a week in advance to ensure that members are going to have time to read the material, because though we've had quite short reports coming up in the future, you know, they could be enormous reports for members to read. The working group needs to focus on strategic matters, so we're not able to cover specific ward matters. So ward matters will be forwarded directly to officers to answer questions, and they'll be, you know, the answers will be responded to directly to individual board members. And questions concerning the agenda of the working group, if there are questions, if they're forwarded in advance to everybody, then we can answer them in advance, and then that leaves us time to focus on the key issues during the meeting rather than be distracted by answering things that we could have sorted out ahead of time. So the recommendations for the paper are set out in section 7. So it's option 1, continue with the LDP review methodology and member engagement as summarised. Amend the LDP methodology and or member engagement to provide further assurance.
Thank you. Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'm just a little bit confused because we've actually got recommendations on the front page of the report, which is the normal place to see them, but we keep getting referred back to options on page 14. So, are we to accept one and not the other, or I'm sorry, I'm at a little bit of a loss, really.
I'm assuming I'll ask the leader to answer, or Mr. Dodson, but I'm assuming that we're working to the recommendations under 2, little 1 and little 2, and leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as per the recommendations on the order paper, the report be noted, and the second one is to give the assurance to members really about the methodology. The options were in there because that really is summarising. If we have that assurance, then obviously the local plan review is going to continue with that methodology, with member engagement approaches summarised within the report. And the other option, Chairman, is about if it was to be amended, the local the LDP methodology and or member engagement approach to providing. So that's what's on the table, but really the report hopefully does give that assurance to members about the methodology that has been applied so far. I think the report explains very well about whether you do partial or a full review. It explains all the details regarding the legal process and other things you have to meet regarding the requirements that are laid out, and if you don't, and how you can fall foul of those. I think for me, when you look at the report, I think the things that are very important are the implications of if we have a real great period of time where we do not progress with this work. Actually having this pause in itself is not ideal, if I'm honest, but it was Council's will, and that was what agreed, and hence we've got the report coming before members tonight. But I do place a warning there that the longer that pause goes, then we actually will take a longer period of time to complete this review, and it will create uncertainty for our communities, for residents, for businesses and everyone. And it will actually not give them confidence so much probably in the planning system. And I do just air members to consider all the implications which are highly detailed within the report. And I consider, Chairman, that the report does actually give the assurances and to why the methodology that's been applied. I was very pleased to see that we are largely, although it wasn't there when we started our review, with the PAS, Route Master, and the toolkit that's provided. I know other authorities that have done it, but of course we started our review very early on, back in February 2021, with this council agreed to do that, and under a local development scheme. However, you can see from the diagram within the report clearly where we are in that process. But I would urge council to really consider this report, see that it does provide the assurances members seek, and I really think we do need to press on with our local development plan review, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I actually would suggest that you said the impact on customers is high. I actually think it's no higher than what the present situation we're in, by the way that it's already been managed so far. I think we've exposed ourselves by not having a 5-year land supply, but the LDP not being managed over the past few years. And actually taking account and monitoring. We had a fact that when it went to appeal, we had a 2.92, I think it's 2.90 years land supply, when it went to a huge appeal which cost this council a substantial amount of money. And we actually proved that that figure was incorrect. I actually have some issues in how the figures are actually being calculated. Sometimes we think they're being included, other times they're not being included. That's where I actually would like a greater understanding. I think I do have a fairly good understanding of what actually happens on the LDP anyway, but I don't see how it can actually make our situation worse, Leader, so I do not agree with you on that. I think the release of the healer...
Councillor Stamp, I'm advised that you're going into details, which isn't what we're on about. So if you could round up your...
Chairman, how can we not go into detail? Do we just actually say, I agree with it? I don't agree with it, Chairman.
Councillor, Mr Dodson. You could come back in a minute, Councillor Stamp. Let's have Mr Dodson's view.
Members asked separately for a review of the 5-year housing land supply and the methodology through which that is developed. Those workshops are now happening through a separate process. The item tonight is around the methodology for the review of the LDP. So it's a separate issue, and that's exactly what the presentation was on today, is how we undertake this review. 5-year housing land supply and any questions around that, and indeed how it's been managed through the delivery of the current plan is not what the question is about that's been asked for this meeting by members. This meeting was asked to review the methodology of the LDP review, which is what the report speaks to and what the presentation covers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Dodson. Councillor Stamp.
Noted, but it actually has been raised by the leader herself just now about the level of risk, which was high. Yeah, I didn't raise that. The leader raised that, Chairman. Yeah. I actually responded to what the leader said. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm not being critical. I'm just taking advice. The leader says it's in the report.
Yes, I was quoting from the report and the implications. I didn't go into any further detail, Chairman.
Being similar to a 30-month statutory review period proposal put forward in a government white paper. My question here is what the progress of the proposed legislation outlined in that white paper is. In other words, while limiting the review to being similar to the 30-month period may have seemed like good practice, given the constraints placed by the pandemic, such as meetings in person and the presence of other new and strong influences on work and socio-economic factors affecting policy changes, as well as the complexity of the issues facing our rural district, is time pressuring the LDP review in this way still appropriate? Yes, there will be extra budgetary considerations involved in this, but given that the LDP review is so central to shaping the present and future of our district, is the apparent extent of the rush justified, and would a review of timeframes really bring on board greater risk? I cannot see how we could possibly undermine the confidence of the community currently has in the planning system, much more than it is currently undermined, simply by taking a little more time over the LDP review. Furthermore, our weaknesses in the current plan really undermining its defensibility in planning decisions right now. Our current 5-year housing land supply surely does that anyway. The main issue, as far as I can see, Appendix 1 makes such a persuasive argument for wholesale policy review, and actually, Anne, I'd like to commend you on that report because it made it a lot clearer to me, so thank you, that a single question comes to mind. Why has there been so little obvious consultation up till now with members on those policy revisions so far? And if anyone thinks they haven't happened so far, Appendix 1 actually contradicts that, because to me, that is a tremendously huge body of work that I knew nothing about until we got this report. Given the importance in the whole report placed upon both the necessity of this task and the time frame, plus the advice at where we currently are in the LDP review process, is it not extraordinary that at 6.5 in the report we have a table showing the work so far of the Planning Policy Working Group, which includes 4 months where it was cancelled due to lack of business, and where I am struggling to spot any real consultation on the content of the plan of the policies being revised. I understand what Anne said at the end there, that we have now revised the terms of reference of that working group, but how long have we got left? I would say not long enough. Thank you.
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Councillor Spence. He's probably saved me for about 20 minutes worth of
You've got 3
conversation.
minutes, I think. There's a difference between asking questions and debating.
Yeah, this
asking
is not
questions is perhaps timeless, but debating 3 minutes.
Well, yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'll have to speak quickly coming near the end then, because it is, and thank you for the report. It helps produce clarity. We look at the methodology. Methodology means the way of achieving things, and we have a framework which is clearly outlined in here to cover legal and policy compliant structures. The problem that I have, Councillor Spence has also picked up, is about 4.3, and we're working on a planning white paper. It's only a white paper. I don't think that's been brought, the bill's been brought forward. So the time, I would be really careful about us trying to rush this thing through. Point 5 on procedural methodology, I agree with that, but the meat inside the bones is down to council. So what council decides needs to go into that plan, as long as it meets all legal frameworks and is policy compliant, is important, and we haven't had the engagement that we need to have. There's a couple of things, I'm going to cull a lot of my points. Because Councillor Spencer said things here. 5.10.6, which is on page 9, it talks about the review of the plan, and it talks about the LDP, the decision as whether the council therefore has the freedom to conduct a full or partial review of the LDP is not as flexible as it could be for some, with more recent plans, etc., etc. But we still say that we could choose how we review our plan. Because it is, at the end of the day, our plan. And the conclusions at the end, the impact on customers, little one, if you read through that, it talks, the longer the LDP is paused, the longer it will take for it to be reviewed, which could also undermine the confidence local communities having in the planning system, etc. I suggest that this has already happened. This is why we're having this conversation, and we had the officers do this work. Given the number of opposition groups that are active, and the call for sites exercise and suggested changes to settlement hierarchy and unscientific methodology being used to assess rural infrastructure. And I think the little 3 in that point was also talks on impact of high. Is the pause of the LDP causing uncertainty, etc. And there's a bullet point that talks about legal compliance with the legislative framework and national policy, such as, I'd like to see some detail around that. The weight that can be attached to the LDP 2029, the current one, talks about the development, management and enforcement decisions making it to continue to age and become out of conformity with national policy or law, again, such as the ability to influence proactively which parts of the district, this is really important, can grow as a part of a coordinated strategy. And it says this will have an effect on the ability of the council to influence planning for infrastructure associated with growth. That implies that officers' policies determine where growth is rather than a balanced view based on residents' desires. And I think I could go on for another hour, but you won't allow me, Chair. But I think that one of the things that is really clear is that we haven't had the member input that we had. We feel excluded, therefore the residents feel excluded. It's a bit of a, this is the structure and this is the process that we have to follow, but we haven't had the ability to influence that. And it's the council's local development plan. It's not mine, it's not Mr. Dodson's, it's the council's. And it's absolutely critical we get that right going forward. So I think that we should look at another recommendation on the paper, which is on page 7. And I think I'm probably going to get something chucked at me, because obviously these policies have been reviewed, as Councillor Spenceley says, because they've identified which strategic policies will need this amount of work. I've had no input into any of that. I think we should have full member engagement workshops to provide input and collaborative approach and reflecting the input of the members to help shape the plan. I think it's a bold move, but we need to have that. We need to get together. We need to talk about what our desires are, get the views of the officer and the legal teams to come back and say, well, we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. What infrastructure we need, because if we don't do that, we're going to be excluded. So I think the methodology, the framework is great. This has really helped, but the content and the flesh on the bones, we need input. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's some issues there. You was put in another recommendation, which can you say what that was?
Oh, I can indeed. I actually wrote that down.
Well, that would be helpful.
It helped me. I reckon. See, we've got the option. So
this is to go in under recommendation 2, under the to make it a little 3.
Yeah. We could. Well, it's actually option 7 because recommendation number. Oh, hang on, let me go for the front page because this is why Councillor Fluker quite rightly said it's a tad confusing.
Yeah, I'm not trying to change. We can't change the officer's report, which is what you seem to be doing.
No, Chair.
A recommendation that we've got in front of us.
Yeah, no, Chair. It says the recommend little 2. It says that the council consider its decisions options as set out in section 7 of this report to assure itself. So those options in section 7 don't include. Which you could add on to option 2 if you want. You could say amending.
I'm sorry. I've got little 2 recommendation that the council assures itself that the Maldon District Local Development Plan review methodology is an appropriate, lawful and procedural basis from which to conduct the Maldon District Local Development Plan review. Yeah. That's recommendation 2.
But then, Chair, you go back onto page 14. Page 14 and section 7, and it says options because.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong.
That's right. It's rather complicated.
A wrong agenda. Yeah. Okay. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thanks. Chair. Sorry. Yeah. It was really, and thank you, Chair, because it's really important we get this right for future because we need development. We need it in the right place, and we need to be involved in it. We can either members we can amend option 2 and say amend the LDP review methodology and or member engagement approach to provide further assistance by having full member engagement workshops to provide input and a collaborative approach reflecting the input of members to help shape the plan. So that then covers everything, gives us the opportunity to have those times, and I won't accept the fact that no, we haven't got time because we have, and I am acutely aware of the need to get these things right.
That, but there you go. Mr. Dodson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think that the time scale has already changed on this, and but I'd like to ask Mrs. Althoff-Shortland to clarify some of the other issues and some of the points that have been raised as well. Thank you.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, thank you, members. Yes, the timescale is a movable feast. So, depending on the outcome of this council meeting, if we agree that we're going to move on with the methodology, next week we will sit down and redo the timetable and replot the timetable to make sure that we can fit the work in. Not within 30 months, because I don't think that's possible now because of the level of engagement that members want. And the engagement with members is none of the policies have been reviewed yet. We haven't done that work because we're only at the stage of issues and options. We haven't even come back to you with the responses on the issues and options consultation yet. We've got to do that. And the first big piece of work that members have got to do is refine the 7 options that were in issues and options, refine them down to a lesser number so that we can start applying the evidence, we can start working with you, we can start commissioning transport modelling, we can start working with people like Eggley and Water who won't work with us on all of those options. It's too much work. We can't do that, and we can't even start really drafting policies until you reach the stage of refining the spatial options down. So all the consultation comes after. So there's loads of consultation with members. I mean, absolutely loads and loads of it. It's just that we haven't got to that point yet in the process. This is why we wanted the policy working group to really hone down its work, because you'll find as we go through this process that you will be asked to do an incredible amount of work, and it will take members an incredible amount of time. But we haven't got to that point yet. The appendix the appendix 1 is just us going through the plan, policy by policy, looking to see if it conforms to national policy and guidance, and looking to see if the evidence is out of date, so that you have a clearer picture about how much in conformity your present plan is. Now, that doesn't mean that when you go and make decisions, that the plan is the starting point for your decisions, but it's just an information to show you how in conformity or out of conformity your present plan is. Does that answer some of your questions?
Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you. It does help, but it doesn't meet the fundamental sort of crux of the matter of I don't even know where we are now, and I spend an awful lot of time with it. I don't know where the call for sites has materialised. There's so much information that we don't know what the sort of plan will be, and there will be work that's been done. So whilst I accept and understand that, I think it's a little bit. I need to think of a respectful way of putting it. I think it's a bit remiss to say we haven't got to a certain stage, because we've got all of this level of detail, and I gather I can get the policies. You reviewed the policies against the MPPF, which is a guidance, and the relevant legislation. But from now, we need to draw that line and say the methodology, which I felt very like members are excluded apart from the working group, which is Councillor Spencer didn't meet all the time anyway, with no business on an LDP review plan. That stuck out and was quite a shock. I think we need to do what I'm recommending, and members can support it or not. But I think we as a council, we need to own this plan. We need to put the detail within the plan and work within the methodology and be involved at every step of the way, so that we can actually look at what's needed going forward from a resident's perspective.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you.
And I think we'll come back to. Ms. Shawland, do you wish to say something?
Yes, some of the work that's been done already, we have to be very careful that members don't predetermine the site allocation. So we have to be really careful about that, and a legal framework, because when we get to the end result, we can be legally challenged.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you don't take this as its stepped process, then we could be in real trouble.
Thank you.
I'm not saying that at all.
Swain, Leader, you can come back at the end.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think this use of the word methodology is being cast too wide. What we've got are issues of the review process. And the methodology, which Ms. Aldroff-Shawland says is laid down for us, and content, and questions relating to the 5-year land supply or the assessed need, and to my mind, the justification for what the housing market areas are really matters of content going into the review process. And we are asked to validate or agree that the methodology of the review process is acceptable and conforms legally and so on. And there are one or two basic decisions which we need to be quite clear on. Two basic decisions. I mean, to accept as Ms. Shawland's report quite clearly lays out that we need to make a full review of the plan, and to agree that that is the case. And secondly, there is the question about the timescale of the plan, which I think probably needs to be decided fairly early on. But the rest, and this is what Councillor Lagan, I think, has primarily been focusing on, is the member engagement. And there's certain areas where we haven't been involved, and we do need to be. We need to have a detailed explanation of the sites that are deemed to be suitable or unsuitable and the reasons why.
We're getting off the subject.
Well, I mean that's the sort of engagement that we need in detail, and be involved in this question of reviewing the 7 options and bringing them down to 3. This is part of the process, and I don't see why that can't progress.
I've certainly got a sense that members are upset at the lack, or their perceived lack of involvement to this stage.
Yes, but I think, Chairman, we need to consider what we mean by methodology when we use the word. We're talking about the review process that is essentially laid down for us, and not how we go about implementing that. So I think we note the methodology, and we confirm the second of the options in item para 7, but with the emphasis on the need for engagement on the key decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, in terms of the method, there's nothing wrong with the method. We are following the correct method. So we can be assured as a council that the officers and the council is following the correct method, and we're doing it legally. Now, the issue is, and it's, to me, it stems back to last year. So last year, when we first started doing this, we had the opportunity because of the Bradwell B power station not going ahead. So immediately the council thought, oh, this is a great opportunity. We can use these officers and do a partial review of our LDP. Now, because of the speed that we were going at that particular time, there wasn't the member engagement. And that's where the issue arises. There wasn't the member engagement. There wasn't enough member engagement. Now, the crux of it for me was last year, when the settlement hierarchy spreadsheet was sent out to all members, but not all members did it. And that's where the options things arises from. So I did remind lots of members in the independent, you need to complete this, but it still didn't happen. So you can't take a horse to water, as they say. So that's where the issue arises, that perhaps...
You can take it.
Well, yeah, you know what I meant. Something along those lines. I've had a long day. So in terms of, that, to me, is where this issue arises. So we now... Exactly. It wasn't explained enough. So we've now made the changes to the working group so that everybody is involved, which is the crucial thing. And what we've learned from this, and the thing that we need to change, is we need to ensure that members are involved, are included as much as possible through the discussions. You know, we've put this on hold, so the things that we want to talk about, we haven't talked about. We haven't narrowed down the sites. We haven't narrowed down the options. We haven't said, in terms of those things, because we've paused it. But we've now, if we move it forward, we can do that, and all members can get involved in it. I think that's the crucial thing Councillor Lagan's saying, and others are saying, is we want to be involved, and that's great that members want to be involved in it. So if we can continue with that, and that's, I think, the only thing we really need to change, is to ensure that wherever possible, that everybody is consulted and involved, and it is open to everybody. And it's not just the working group. If that means the working group has 31 people on it, so be it. Yeah, and that's it. And the other thing as well is that members that have been here longer than I have probably found that this process was different to last time. And I think that's again where some of the concerns have come. Oh, it's not like it was. Well, again, obviously the method has probably changed since that time. So we do need to do it. We need to get on with it. But we need to make sure everybody is involved and that all members are happy. And that's the only tweak that we need to make, I think.
Another recommendation.
Well, I'm just picking up what Councillor
We
Lowe
have
said.
regular seminars, member seminars. Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I like the idea of the horse. The horse is a good one. Chairman, as far as this is concerned, Chairman, you know, if the LDP is a racehorse and the council is a stable, I can't help feeling that it's bolted. What concerns me is what returned, because at the moment, with the lack of member involvement, I fear it may be a donkey, Chairman. But, Chairman, what concerns me is something that Ms Shortland just said, when she spoke about the methodology and then she spoke about refining options down. And I think, Chairman, so I'm just ensuring myself that the Chairman is on board with what I'm saying, is refining those options down. Now, one of my questions is, and I may have missed it, but I can't actually find anywhere where the 7 options were agreed by council, and I have looked for that. And I can't see specifically where council voted to. Well, I'll give. If they were, then I give way. But my concern, my overarching concern now is that we've gone for a call of sites, and some of those sites within those options, the applicants have been written to and been told that they're acceptable, subject to sustainability. So we've actually moved that whole optioneering process 1 to 7 forward without any input from members. Now, members haven't had the opportunity to say, we haven't had an option ourselves to score those and say, well, look, you know, this is what we prefer to do, and this is why it's so much different to the LDB last time. It's being led by the developers. We've seen what's happened at North Fanbridge. We've got an application coming forward, which is part of one of these options. And we now have this situation, and please tell me I'm wrong, and I've mentioned it before, whereby at appeal, we could have the development management team objecting to an application and the policy team saying this is acceptable subject to sustainability tests. And you may well nod your head and say that's not true, but based on the letters that were sent out or the email that was sent out, that is true. If these locations are sustainable, and I can't help thinking that there should have been proper engagement over those options before we went to the public consultation, because once we did that, we went to the public consultation, then this is no longer the members' plan. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that thinks that, Chairman.
I've got the leader and then Mr. Dodson.
Well, Chairman, if it did go to council, we don't need to discuss that. So.
Well, Chairman, as it's been raised, I think we will discuss it. With all due respect, what I would like to say is I understand how members feel about the engagement, and yes, this is a different process to the previous local plan and the member engagement route there. However, the planning policy working group, I think, was opened up certainly in March, and obviously there are certain members that do come that haven't been appointed to the policy planning working group, and others, what other reason, but that was certainly opened up. Yes, there could be, I mean, we've had some vision workshops. When I say I'm talking about the council now. And Councillor Siddle was actually Chairman of Strategy and Resources, I recall the elements you're talking about, I'm pretty sure, regarding the hierarchy when we did those. I think you're also Chairman of the Planning Policy, or perhaps Councillor Stilts was maybe all the way through. And that did actually go through S&R. And I think it was council. But what happened was, I can recollect very well, and shame Councillor Hurd's not here, unfortunately, due to, how can I put it this way, disturbances that may have occurred in the chamber, it was delayed. And therefore, it was delayed by a couple of months, as I recall, 3. So we had that delay. And yes, it certainly was a very big report, very full report on that. And that was covering the issues and options. That's how we had to agree going out to consultation, the 7. Now, we haven't looked anymore at the issues and options because at the moment the officers are drawing up all the responses for members to consider. And we did last time actually, then go out on preferred options, and that's the process that will engage at the right time here. And that is for members to consider what options they want to go with out those 7. But it's easier if you do narrow it down. We did that in the previous process. But that is for members to come into the equation. Definitely, that's a member. I think.
Mr. Dodson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I will hand over to Mrs. Althoff-Shortland shortly to give some detailed responses on those. But I was going to say more or less a lot of what the leader said, that those options were, and the hierarchy was developed through workshops, and the issues and options, when it went to consultation, was approved for consultation, which included those 7 options, and that was approved by council. So I wanted to make clear on that. None of those sites either are selected. They're subject to the optioneering and the options being developed and selected, through which will be the process of selecting the sites. But I'll hand over through you, Chairman, to Mrs. Althoff-Shortland to explain in more detail.
As a point of clarity, I think it would be really, really important if we could see the email on acceptability and sustainability, if it was put up on the screen, what's been sent to the applicants, because that doesn't quite align from what I think I just heard. But we can perhaps do that in a moment. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think that we can sort that later, perhaps. Mr. Shortland.
Yeah, the call for sites on the HELA was originally called a Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment. Every council has to do one of those, and it has to be monitored and reviewed every year, irrespective of whether you're site allocating or you're reviewing your plan. Every year you should be reviewing that document, you should be looking for new sites, and you should be updating that document. We hadn't done that piece of work since 2012, so it was one of the things that we had to update. So the sites that go in that, they are given a broad assessment, suitable or not suitable. Now that can change as evidence is then piled on top of the sites and each site's assessed. But if the developers or the people who submitted the proposals were clearly sent an email or a letter stating it does not allocate their site, and it most certainly does not give those sites planning permission. When we hone down our options from 7 to a much smaller number, the sites that fall out of the options that were chosen, they just sit in the HELA. They just sit there. Nothing will ever happen to them again. They're just in that evidence piece of document. And what the HELA does, it very broadly tells us how much land we've got that could potentially be developed, because we can't work out which options are okay if we don't know if we've got enough land in each option to deliver what we need. So it's all part of a process, and then what happens is we'll hone down the options to a smaller number, then we'll start applying evidence to those options. So we haven't done any transport modelling with the County Council yet, because we need to reduce the number of our options. Once we start doing that work and we start doing things like looking more in detail at heritage, the wildlife site stuff will be coming back in and we'll be applying that. We're having an updated strategic flood risk assessment. That needs to be applied to the options that we choose. That will change the dynamics of the sites that sit within those options. So the ones that you see as suitable now and unsuitable, that can change radically once we start applying the evidence and modelling that we look at. And that's where members start getting involved, because you can't make a decision until you have all of the relevant information in order to make a robust decision. So we're not at that stage yet at all. What we've done is a piece of work that we should have done probably every year from 2012. We haven't done it. So we've actually just brought the council up to date, really.
That seems to be new information. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Stamp and Councillor Lagan, I'll come back to you briefly in a minute, but I want to start thinking about getting some issues on the table. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Unfortunately, we haven't got anyone from DM here, but and I'm really following on from what Mrs. Althoff-Shawland has just said. But the point is, while we have no allocated sites, or no more allocated sites, and while we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, broadly speaking, any site anywhere only has to prove it's sustainable to fulfil the tilted balance and gain planning permission. So the sites in the call for site are in the same position as every other site, and I'm obviously more than happy to be corrected by Mrs. Althoff-Shawland if that's wrong. I know why members want to be involved sooner, because they want to look at the sites, because their residents want them to look at the sites, because residents, by and large, don't like quite a lot of them. I know I don't like quite a lot of the ones that have come forward in the call for sites, but now is not the time, not until we've decided on the options for growth. Thank you.
Councillor Stamp, briefly.
Chairman, I've not got a lot to say. I think Councillor, excuse me, contrary to what Councillor Fluker always says, a lot to say actually. Even in my absence, he speaks on my behalf, Chairman. When he doesn't have my permission, I think you'll find. Yes, yeah. And Councillor Swain actually has summed it up. I feel there's a bit of discourse. The members want to be involved, and I feel as though there's pushback from the officers. I knew you were going to shake your head, Mr. Dodson, but I think there's a bit of a lack of understanding. Not that we don't want to work together. It's just that we feel that some members haven't been. And I know for a fact on that planning policy working group, I said from day one all the members should be entitled to it, and I think there's a pushback because everybody said there'd be far too many members actually being on the group and nothing would get done, which I understand that, but I think it's everybody in this chamber has basically said they want more information and be able to work with it, and I think if we can move along those lines, Chairman, I think we can get this summed up and we can move on.
I think Councillor Stamp, there's some sense in that. I shouldn't get involved in the debate, but it seems to me the consensus was that there was acceptance of the methodology as to present. So we are where we are now, and we just need to move forward from where we are now. And the other issue that Councillor Siddle and others have alluded to, or not alluded to, made very clear, is the lack of member involvement. So surely, if we can agree, we move forward from where we are now, and we have more member involvement. Leader, did you?
Well, so I forgot Councillor Lagan, you said, I think.
Yeah, okay, Councillor Lagan.
Thank you. I'll be quite succinct. I just, Councillor Thompson, it's not correct. He can build anywhere as long as sustainability. The plan still has, our current LDP still has weight, and of course the NPPF and the presumption of tilt applies. You've hit the nail on the head. I think the proposal that I made, the amendment to the recommendation, is clear, that sums up what all members have said, and Chair, exactly what you've just said. And I think, and it galls me, Councillor Fluke is 100% right in what he says. I would like to see the email, very much.
I think I saw a message to say that could be put up on the screen.
Yeah, that'd be really lovely. I'll just conclude now, Chair, because I don't want to go over old ground. I think that we need people in the room together, and I think we need to sit there and be more of a workshop, and then get to the stage where this is what's going to happen. These are our options that we can have, and we've got enough skill at the front and with our officers to be able to give us those options. Because in closing, in the report, 5.4 says compliance with these legislative and policy requirements is imperative in the LDP. We all understand that. Review to be found legally compliant and sound to the future examination in public and reduce the risk of successful judicial review. We know that. We're not daft. We want to make sure it is sound. We want to reduce the risk to the council, but we've got to be able to put stuff forward and have a challenging way of thinking about it, to say this can stand up. It might not be how we did it in the past, but we can do it now, and it would stand a very, very good chance. The inspector's going to look at things reasonably, Chair, isn't he? So we need to do that in a reasonable way.
I'm sorry, Councillor. Chairman, point of personal clarity.
Right.
That is not what I said. I was badly misquoted, and I was more than happy to be corrected by any of the officers. I mean, planners are planners, even if they do work in a slightly different discipline. They're all qualified planners in the same way. And all I said was, sites that have come forward in the call for sites don't have an advantage over any other site because they've still got to produce their sustainability. They've still got to evidence their sustainability.
Right, thank you.
I object very strongly to being misquoted.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'll do, because I think I'm a man of honour.
Let's not have...
No, I'm not going to have an argument. What I'll do is I'll go back to the tape. If I'm incorrect, then I'll send a formal apology. If I'm not, I'll stand by it.
Councillor Spenceley, briefly.
Yes, I was just going to suggest that backing up Councillor Lagan's idea about workshops, more workshops, and that we have them in person, or at least an option to be in person. I understand that some of the officers would have to join us remotely, and that's fine. But I just think that having meetings in person is much more productive, as I think a lot of us have already seen in the last couple of weeks with the 5-year housing land supply workshops. It just working group. It makes a lot of difference. That's what I wanted to say, to make it positive and take it forward.
Thank you, Leader. Can we have you sum up,
Well,
please?
Chairman, I mean, I think heard all the points raised, and I think the sticking point that appears to be is the member engagement and a desire to have much more of that. I think the assurances might be there with the methodology, and I appreciate what Councillor Swain said about the methodology, but if to amend the methodology, then you're tweeting with some of the legalities, and that might not be a possibility. So I think what members are saying, go with the LDP review methodology moving forward, but much more member engagement and wider than just the planning policy working group being opened up. But it will mean briefings, and it will mean member seminars, because members have stated and made it quite clear they're feeling a bit disenfranchised at the moment, and I do believe we can achieve that. And I would rely on Councillor Stilts, the planning policy working group chairman, to be involved in that, and of course all members. But I feel there is room to reach an agreement here on moving forward, but with obviously the clarification that much more member engagement is to be involved in the appropriate way. We did have working groups and member seminars before, and they did work well. It was all in the chamber, and I think that's the way forward, because I think not to do that would probably result in something like happening now if members do feel disenfranchised. So that would be my proposal, Chairman, on the table.
Is that seconded?
I've made an amendment to a recommendation, which was
no,
it's not a point of order. I don't want to get into all of that. I'll get my megaphone, but I made a point that on option 3 on 7 on the options and made, which has been, I'm not sure it's been seconded or not. I believe that Councillor Stamp did second that.
Seconded it.
Are we coming away from what I thought was a consensus now?
Well, Chair, no. We said, because we went with option 2 and we just amended it, didn't we? We said that option 2 amend the LDP review, which I think covers the flavour of everything, to review methodology, member engagement, and full member engagement workshops, and to provide input and collaborative approach to reflecting the input of the members to help shape the plan.
Can I see a written additional recommendation that you're recommending? Could you write it out for us, please? Right. Well, lovely. Can you just pass it up here so we can see I can see what we're dealing with.
So how are we going to amend the methodology? Well, this is what I don't understand what Kevin said.
No.
I don't know what he said.
No, that's what I can't. I thought we'd agreed to methodology. It's okay.
You won't read the right, I'm afraid.
Oh, yeah. What have I got?
Down the bottom here, look.
Option full member
provide
input and collaboration approach, reflecting the input of the members. There's nothing about changing methodology.
That's not methodology.
You're not changing methodology.
That's involved. It's not methodology. It says more
Yeah, but I've got a suggestion. We adjourn for a couple of minutes to try and get this sorted, because I think this, Miss Casey, I'm adjourning.
You're live, Chairman.
Thank you, members. Leader, would you like to sum up? And we have a solution, I believe.
Well, yes, Chairman, I think the summing up was probably as it was before, so I don't know that I need to go over that ground. But what I would say, and obviously during that adjournment, I think we've been able to make things clearer and the intentions. And so I move, Chairman, recommendation little 1 to note the report, and then recommendation little 2, option 1 of page 14, 7.1, but with the assurance enhanced, with the insurance enhanced member involvement through workshops and seminars. I think that was largely what I said, sort of, but we've now got the defined wording through that purpose of when you adjourn the meeting, Chairman. So I move that.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. All those in agreement, please show. That looks like it is unanimous. I thank you very much and close the meeting at 21:15.